The key to long-term success for Vandy is for Vandy's offense to develop a vertical passing game.
You are Locked On Vandy, your daily podcast on the Vanderbilt Commodores, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Vandy podcast and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Corey Burton. Thanks for making Locked On Vandy your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So now and through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. So visit FanDuel.com to get started. So it's Alcorn State week, and coming off a huge win, sometimes these type of games, especially coming off a game like Virginia Tech, can be a little bit tough. So for Vandy to maintain their levels of success and continue the upward trajectory, it's important to not step backwards in games like these, right? So you are going to be a heavy favorite. It's going to be easy to kind of throttle down a little bit, but maintaining an aggressive mindset and building depth are key for the long SEC road ahead. I think defense versus mobile quarterbacks, you're going to face some more mobile quarterbacks as you go. Communication is key as well. But long-term, to take the pressure off the defense, it is vital for Vandy to develop a vertical passing game. So a lot of these factors they all kind of tie into each other. And in a game like Alcorn State, it can be easy to kind of fall into the trap of, hey, we played well, we were great against Virginia Tech, and, we're getting our flowers, all the accolades, Diego Pavia, SEC Player of the Week, you get, top 25 votes and things like that, where the SEC is actually recognizing you. I was on the SEC squad today for the Locked On channel, and let's just say I got my flowers and then was quickly reminded that it's Vandy. So I think for Vandy to kind of distance themselves from that whole stigma, you have to come out and trounce Alcorn State. And unfortunately for Alcorn State, that's kind of the deal. So to do that, you have to do things offensively, and you have to kind of bolster. And if you're going to have any long-term success, whatever that looks like, you're going to have to kind of have a well-rounded offense, because you can't just do option. You can't just do passing. You can't just do one thing. You've got to be well-rounded, or well-rounded enough to still be dangerous. And when you have Diego Pavia, you're always dangerous. Let's be honest about that. But again, as I've said, defenses are going to be able to compress the field against you, and those option runs are going to come fewer and far between as you go throughout the season, because teams are going to figure that out. So it's games like these, games like hopefully Georgia State will be, that you can develop a passing game, a vertical passing game. I think your short passing game is great. Your intermediate passing game is pretty good, but it's that vertical deep passing game that I think has to take that next step. And for Pavia, that's been, throughout camp, that's been his biggest difficulty. Throwing accurate passes, or throwing passes that have enough power to really stretch the field vertically, is still a bit of a challenge. Now, I know they hit a 31-yarder to Quincy Skinner in the end zone. That was kind of like a outer fringes of the red zone type play. And I know there was a couple of deep shot. There was another shot play that you hit to Eli Stowers, but it was a quick throw and you got it to him within that 20-yard range. That can be considered explosive technically, but it's really not as much vertical. So you have to kind of work on that, and have to have different things where you can attack the deep zones across the field and not just on the sidelines, because that's going to get taken away as well. So in being able to develop that, it's multifaceted, right? So when you're looking at how to develop that stuff, when I say it's multifaceted, I mean it's not just your quarterback throwing to your receivers. All right, your protection has to line up, right? So you have to have the calls across the board, which, speaking of which, side note, Stephen Hubbard, holy cow. Like, I watched some of the reps that he was in, and he was bulldozing people. Just as a quick note, as a side note. that was completely off on the tangent. But for your offensive line, they have to be able to protect, right? You have to, as a quarterback, you have to get yourself in the right protection, and the timing has to be there, right? The timing has to be almost impeccable with the deeper the routes go, because there's a lot more coordination in where they're breaking the route, when they're going to come open in certain zones, or whatever the case may be. It's more crucial for the timing on those deeper routes because guys are much more athletic back there, and there's a little bit less confusion because there's less people and there's less things going on the deeper you get into the defense. So being able to protect and not having Diego Pavia running around for his life and taking 11-yard sacks and fumbling the ball and, throwing something away or giving the ball away, so to speak. So to eliminate those mistakes, I think starts up front. It always does. The protection has to be stellar, and you have to be right there. So, and I think the offensive line did play well. I think the protection was pretty good for the most part. There was some breakdowns. That's going to happen when you play a defensive front as talented as Virginia Tech's was, especially as talented of a pass rush that Virginia Tech brought to the table. They did what they were supposed to do. But I think for Vandy to continue to improve and for us to be able to say that this Virginia Tech game is not a flash in the pan, I think your offensive line has to take the next step and start to kind of limit those big plays that the defense has, being able to protect against that. And the quarterback can help that too. Diego Pavia can help the offensive line also by getting the ball out on time, by seeing the field better, by understanding and having that chemistry with the receivers of knowing, okay, if I'm throwing a deep dig, he's going to break as soon as I hit my back foot on the last part of my drop. He's going to come open on the hash mark, and I've got to deliver a strike to the hash mark, layered over a linebacker, layered over a second-level defender, and fit it into a tight window. I've got to be able to make those throws if we're going to be anything special, okay? Otherwise, you have to at least attempt those shots enough to where the defense is going to respect you. They're going to play off a little bit, so you're not only creating horizontal space with your formations and your motions, but you're also creating some of that vertical space, which creates some more open zones for short intermediate passing and for option game as well, which does include some throws. So this is going to be interesting to kind of see how they take that, to see if they take more shots early on, or if they're just gonna run roughshod with their option. And in some cases they may not get the chance to, because their option runs might be so good that they may not be able to develop that too much. They may not get the opportunities, which happens, but you hope that you can kind of develop a little downfield accuracy. You can develop a little bit of a somewhat semblance of a vertical passing game so that you can have that when you travel to Missouri. So you can have that when Bama comes to town, and you want to have a chance to be competitive, and you don't want it to be a 28-point blowout in the first quarter against Alabama. You're going to have some of that. You're going to have to challenge them downfield, whether or not you're successful or not. You're going to have to challenge them downfield because you got guys like Quincy Skinner that can go up and get it. So that's something that's important to be able to, to me, when Vandy was able to run, it was because they either hit a shot play or they let Virginia Tech know that they could hit a shot play. They hit a couple that I know of that could be considered shot plays. Some of the other ones can be like there were some yards after catch, and there were some things that classified as explosive, but maybe not so much of a shot play because the ball wasn't delivered, the ball didn't travel as far to get to the receiver. So for me, I think you have to have some sort of threat about that. And when they hit Eli Stowers on that sideline pass where he got out of the pocket, he moved the pocket and was able to deliver a strike to Eli Stowers. The one I thought couldn't have been a more perfect throw to Quincy Skinner right at the sideline in the red zone, or the fringe of the red zone. That was an amazing throw. And those are the type of throws that if Diego Pavia can make those, Vandy's going to be very successful. Vandy's going to score some points, whether their defense can hold up or not, which I trust that the defense can. They've shown that they have the capability of playing fast, physical, aggressive throughout the course of a game. Now they're going to have to do that for the next 11 games if they want to go to a bowl game or if they want to have any sort of success. South Carolina looks shaky at best. Kentucky, well, it's hard to judge Kentucky because of the delay and all the emotional interference that they were dealing with the whole weather stuff. So it's hard to kind of really put a judge on that. We'll get a better idea when them and South Carolina play against each other. If it's like a slop fest, then both teams are kind of up for grabs, or if one team blows out the other, you're going to kind of know where those two teams sit. Texas looked really good. Alabama, of course, is Alabama. Missouri, they look good. They're going to be good. There's, I think there's some nitpicking going on there, but the point is to challenge those teams, to get those SEC wins that you have to get over the hump. You're going to have to develop a vertical passing game. It's going to take some pressure, some physical pressure off of Diego Pavia, because he's not going to be taking shot after shot after shot in the run game. He's going to have cleaner run lanes to where he can get out and get down without taking shots. You're going to have some excitement. You're going to hit some of those vertical shot plays, whether you hit them early on or not. You're going to start to hit them because the timing is going to continue to work out. So you're going to have some of that, and you just can't live in the horizontal stretch and the option run game, because all that's going to be constricted. So in order for long-term success, you just got to kind of have that. So I'm excited for this game. I'm excited to see how they respond. We'll talk about mindset later on, but I'm excited to see how they respond. I'm excited defensively. They're defending some mobile quarterbacks, right? Alcorn State struggled mightily against UAB, lost 41-3, I think 41-6. But they have some talented guys on their roster. Mobile quarterbacks can present a problem for anybody, and for Vanderbilt, Kyron Jones in the second half presented his fair share of problems. So they're going to have to work on defending mobile quarterbacks, and some of that has to do with communication. Some of that has to do with just being in positions to where they can break down and make tackles. Regardless of the case, we'll break it all down next. Passion, drive, and patience is the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, college football is indeed back. A lot of great games in the opening weekend, but it's not too late to catch up before the season is up and out of here in the blink of an eye, because it will be. All right, SEC, ACC, Big 10, and Big 12. You can still get it all from the Locked On Stable college experts by subscribing to the Locked On College Football podcast. Who has a chance to make the playoffs? Did anybody ruin their chances? Is anybody going to ruin their chances in week 2? What teams will cause chaos in their new conferences? There's a lot of questions, but everything you need to know is all in one place. So be sure to follow and subscribe to the Locked On College Football podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Speaking of everydayers, thank you. You make all of this possible. So, talked about some keys for this Alcorn State game. We talked about establishing and developing a vertical pass game. It's so vital, man. It's just the pressure, and the pressure it puts on a defense is just immense, right? It stresses defensive coordinators out when you go vertical. It does. It makes them feel a certain way because, oh no, we can't give up space vertically. We know what happens. You almost can win a game. Virginia Tech. All right. So one of the things that we saw with Vandy against Virginia Tech was Kyron Jones. He's a mobile quarterback. He could run. Well, Vandy had, in the first half they had their way as Virginia Tech was trying to get their bearings and feel their way through the game. But as the game wore on, Kyron Jones became more effective. And some of the communication broke down, and there were some things happening there. Well, here's what Clark Lee had to say in his press conference. This quote stood out to me, by the way. Here's what he had to say in his press conference about mobile quarterbacks. He said, quote, "The concern is when the quarterback breaks the pocket, if you have 6 guys running after them, then there are 6 guys open on the field. That's how explosive plays can happen. I think it's critical that we force them to go into methodical drives and we force them to execute." Now, he was talking a lot about mobile quarterbacks in general, but I think, that quote kind of can go true with a lot of teams that have effective quarterbacks. Anytime you can force a team into methodical drives, methodical seems very boring, very laborious, you have to have a bit of good luck there. And for offensive coordinators, I know because I was one, retired, of course, but I was an offensive coordinator at some point in my life, very recently. And I know that at times I get impatient and want to take shots. I know mobile quarterbacks, if you have a guy that can run, they also get impatient and they want to make things happen because they're electric. And a lot of times it works in their favor. Sometimes it doesn't. And so in those situations, if you force them into small gain, you saw this with Kyron Jones. Small gain, sack, get them off schedule, make them rack up the number of plays. They start to get impatient. They start to try to make things happen, and that's when big plays happen. Like the tip interception to Glenn Seabrooks. There were some near interceptions too that Kyron Jones threw simply because he was trying to make too much happen. So when you're defending mobile quarterbacks, you have to keep them contained. You have to get them on the ground. You have to get shots on them, right? Because that's one thing. If you're a running quarterback, any quarterbacks really don't like to be hit. But mobile quarterbacks, dual threat quarterbacks, guys that can run really, really well, know that their livelihood is in the fact that they can run, they can throw, and they can create when things break down in the pocket. So they're not always sitting back there relying on timing and pocket passing and pocket presence and all that stuff. Diego Pavia is the same way, right? Sometimes he got himself into trouble by being impatient. When Virginia Tech forced Vandy to go on these long methodical drives, then it hindered their opportunity to really make plays. It kind of was counterproductive because they restricted their yardage on first down and second down, got them into a lot of third and longs, and that's not good for a quarterback, especially impatient ones. So in order for Vandy, I think they have to kind of develop that. And that takes a lot of communication. That takes a lot of discipline, right? That takes a lot of, okay, the quarterback's break and contain, but like we know if we come up, he's just going to stop, dump it over our heads. That's what happens. That kind of thing happens. Pavia's done it too. Pavia did it at Virginia Tech. Jones did it to Vandy. It just happens when you have a guy that can run like that. That's just kind of the nature of that beast. So in order to stop a guy like that, in order to limit that and limit the damage of those type of plays, you have to have stellar communication. That's the key to defending mobile quarterbacks. And Alcorn State, kind of looking ahead, they have some guys that can run, right? They have Tyler Macon, who is he was a former Vanderbilt target, but he started his career at Missouri, transferred out, ended up at Alcorn State with an opportunity to play. He's a dual threat guy, and he's a guy that can move. So they're gonna get plenty of reps going against guys that can move a little bit. So this is going to be one of those things where you kind of look at and say, okay, well, it's easy to look at their record and say, okay, they struggled, so we can just kind of take it easy. Nah, man, this is one of those where if you have a mobile quarterback and you give him a chance to make plays, well, let's just put it this way. They can burn you, and he will do everything he can to burn you. So it's going to be something that's to be considered. So, but this defense is just going to have to communicate. They're going to have to figure out what, they're going to have to figure out who is responsible for what when when the quarterback breaks the pocket. How do they handle that? How do they, how does things work? How do we know that now it is okay? It's the discipline of, okay, now he's running. Now we can go and make the play. He's not going to dump it over our head. So that's something that they're going to have to contend with. I mean, Alcorn State, they had their struggles against UAB. Let's just be honest. But they still got some talented players, and they still are a team that can kind of give you some fits and kind of give you all the work that you could ever want. So, but couple quick notes for this defense is Colby Taylor's out. There's a situation that happened. They're calling it internal issues. So Clark Lee has not specified. He's just used the word internal issues and the fact that he is unavailable this week. So he is definitely out. So there's some funky stuff going on there. So as I find out, obviously we'll kind of react to it and I'll kind of figure out, my thoughts on it and just kind of how it'll impact this defense. But the way it's going to impact this defense this week is it's going to build depth. It's going to give some other guys a chance to play. Probably some freshmen that probably didn't think they were ever going to get in. They're going to get in. Corday Sidnor is day-to-day. If you can absolutely help it, limit him as much as you can in this one. I don't think you're going to need Sidnor, but if he can go, you may want to give him a couple reps so he's fresh, but for the most part, I would limit him severely in this game, if not sit him. Let him play against Georgia State because that's a road game, and Georgia State's no offense to Alcorn, but Georgia State's a much better program. So he'll be out more than likely. So anyway, but the dangerous part about games like this, and I'm not going to get into like matchups and specifics about Alcorn State. They have a really good quarterback, Tyler Macon. He was kind of trouble at Missouri and what limited action he got. So he's going to be trouble at Alcorn State. He's good. He can move. He can throw. He can he can hurt you despite the struggles that he may have had against UAB. But mindset's important here. I think this is the most important this might end up being the most important aspect of this game and how Vanderbilt develops that and how they continue to learn how to block out emotional interference, as Coach Page likes to say. But we'll talk about that and we'll wrap up the show next. All right, this episode is presented by FanDuel. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, but we'll have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then, with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. So just visit FanDuel.com to download America's #1 sports book. FanDuel.com, again, is America's #1 sports book. All right, wrapping up here on the Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. Talking about mindset and talking about how Vandy needs to continue that mindset, because it'd be very easy for them to say, we were good, we did this and that, and we looked really good against Virginia Tech, so we can just roll out there and beat Alcorn State. Well, for Vandy, a team that got trounced by UNLV last year, cannot afford to do that. You're not at a point, Vandy, where you can waltz out there and beat anybody on any given day because of who you are. You have to go out there and execute. And I think Diego Pavia has enough swagger to be able to do that, as you could tell. So he's going to be a key factor in this whole mindset thing, because, for Vandy, they've got to, offensively, they've got to have an attacking mindset. They've got to have a kind of that like killer instinct, which if Pavia is in the game, he's definitely going to have that because A, he wants to score on every play, and B, he's going to let you know about it when he does. And he thinks he's good. So far, he's backed it up. He's going to have to continue to back this thing up, back up all of his, I guess you call it trash talk, but everything that he's about. He's a cocky guy, which for your quarterback, you want him to be cocky, but you want him to also toe that fine line of, hey, I can't be too cocky because I got a team to support and I've got some guys to make plays for. So that mindset has got to be introduced and implemented throughout the team, because Pavia's mindset, Pavia's attitude, Pavia's confidence level can radiate through the team. And I think you saw a little bit of that on Saturday and the effect that it had, because Pavia's like, hey guys, I got this. And he went and got it. And then when he went and got it, his teammates believed that he has it, and they went and balled out. They went and showed out and won the game in overtime. They made all the plays they needed, especially like when Vandy tied it up and Virginia Tech had it with just under 2 minutes to go. I think in most cases they would have just ripped the ball down the field and taken the lead and won the game. But Vandy's defense stood up because Pavia, he was good, man. He backed up everything that he claimed. He backed it up. He played hard. He made it happen. He created, and the defensive guys appreciated that. You could tell because they went out and made plays for him. And then he gave them a chance to win it at the end. And of course, it didn't come to fruition, but they ended up winning in overtime. So that mindset has got to continue. The point is, because you know all this, but the point is that mindset has to continue through Saturday, right? When you start the game on Saturday, now you have to maintain, hey, we're going to start fast every week, because they started fast against Virginia Tech. We're going to start fast and we're going to finish better. We're going to come out of halftime better, right? That's what you got to be thinking. Okay, we're going to come out firing on all cylinders so that we can build a lead, so that we can build the depth. Emotional interference. Now, the emotional interference going into the Virginia Tech game was, oh gosh, everybody's picking against us. Nobody thinks we can win. The world's against us. We haven't picked a quarterback. Our receivers struggle a little bit. Our secondary's banged up and not communicating very well. Our linebackers, there's not enough depth. And our defensive line guys, we don't know who can do what. And the world is telling us that we're still Vandy and we should pump the brakes here, that, hey, it's great to be excited, but remember, you're still Vandy and you're still going to lose. That was the emotional interference coming into last week. Now, the emotional interference, which is something that Vandy definitely doesn't have any experience dealing with, is the accolades, the flowers, oh my gosh, we're going to give you votes for the top 25. Oh, Diego Pavia is SEC Player of the Week. Oh, everybody's talking about you as the darling of the SEC right now. And as of right now, you're one of the teams that won a legitimate football game. So you're being talked about as if you're one of the teams that just won a legitimate football game. So the emotional interference that comes with that now is you walk in a little bit confident, a little bit cocky, feeling yourself a little bit. You're really basking in all this glory, and all of a sudden now you're in a tight one with Alcorn State. It's tail end of the third quarter and you're up by a touchdown, and it ain't 7-0. So your defense isn't pitching a shutout, and you're trying to figure out, okay, what went wrong here? Why are we struggling against Alcorn State? And now the perception is different. Now it's back to, well, the Virginia Tech game might be the only real game we win all year. So the emotional interference is eliminating the emotional interference in that situation is being able to block all of that out and just going out and executing to a standard. And I think that's what Vandy's driving at. I think that's what Coach Steiner wants to have. I think ultimately Clark Lee wants to establish to where they can get to a point where they're not playing to an opponent. They're playing to a standard. Okay, the great teams do it. They play to a standard. So it doesn't matter who's over there, for the most part. I mean, it does to a certain degree because you want to be prepared and you want to know what you're doing. But you're not necessarily worried about the other team as much. You're just worried about enough to where you're going to be successful, but you're not really worried about them because you have to understand that if we don't play to this standard, it could be Brentwood High School over there, or it could be the New England Patriots. It's probably not a good example right now. It could be the Chiefs sitting over there. It doesn't matter who's sitting over there. If we play to our standard, we should, more times than not, be successful. Now, it is possible that you play up to your standard and get beat. That happens, right? That's college football because the other team's doing the same thing. But if you work on playing to your standard, especially in games like this where it just, it's got to be a slam dunk, then you set yourself up for success. You set yourself up to be able to be more consistent playing with that mindset. So eliminating the emotional interference of the overconfidence or the naysayers or the, whatever the case may be, whatever the particular interference is, you have to eliminate it and you have to press on and you have to move on. And so that's what I think Vanderbilt's going to be tasked with this week is how do they come out? What is the mindset? How do they play? How do they execute? Can they go downfield? Can they stop mobile quarterbacks? Can they communicate on defense? Those are the things that you're going to be looking for. Those are the main keys. And, of course, build depth. So that's all that we have today. As we wrap up the week and get closer to the game, it's going to be a fun week to see kind of how Vandy bounces back. But until tomorrow, we'll see you back here then. Follow us at Locked On Vandy on all social media platforms. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Anchor down. Behave yourselves. Peace.